Well, everyone, it's time for us to go ahead and take a look at the iPhone 11 and compare it against the iPhone 14 Pro Max and see which specific phone is a better one for you. Now, if you want to pick up either one of these phones, the links will be down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, side by side, you can definitely tell there are some pretty big differences for sure. The iPhone 11 came out in 2019 and it was a $699 phone, so it was not the most expensive iPhone at that time, and honestly, it was a pretty good value. I think this iPhone has held up fairly well with a 6.1 inch Retina IPS panel on the front. Is the biggest, nicest panel? Not really, but I think it gets the job done. And personally, I think Apple did a decent job this year. Then obviously with the iPhone 12 the next year, they made it a much better panel. But for $699, which has now gone down to maybe like less than 400, probably less than around $300 on this specific phone, it's a pretty decent value nowadays. With the iPhone 14 Pro Max, we are getting a much bigger 6.7 inch Super Retina XDR OLED panel. Now the phone is a much bigger screen and it's also a much heavier phone, so definitely keep that in mind. But with this phone, as I mentioned before, it's a bigger panel, but it's a higher resolution display, it's an OLED display, and it's a ProMotion panel as well. So it's 120 Hertz, which makes this phone feel that much better in the hand. It's not even funny. So personally, I love this phone because of that, and this is honestly a really good looking phone. You don't have a notch, but you do have that dynamic island, which personally I think looks pretty good for the most part. It's okay. Now in terms of thinness and thickness, as you can see, both phones, are not the same thickness. The iPhone 11 is a little bit thinner than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but we also have a little bit of a different side. We have a flat side on the 14 Pro Max. We have kind of like this curved side on the iPhone 11. I think both look great, but the 14 Pro Max I think definitely looks better. Now with the iPhone 11, you're also getting a SIM card tray. With the 14 Pro Max, you are not getting a SIM card tray at all. So that is another minor thing to keep in mind and maybe a big deal to you. Personally, I wish the iPhone 14 Pro Max had it, but they don't, so there's not really much we can do. Now on the back, you can also see that we have triple camera setup on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, whereas on the iPhone 11, we have a dual camera setup. So we have a wide and ultra wide camera here, wide, ultra wide, and telephoto lens on the 14 Pro Max, which looks really good. Now we have glass backs on both, which is really nice, but we have the standard glass back on the iPhone 11. With the 14 Pro Max, we have this frosted glass back. So I will say, in my opinion, the 14 Pro Max has a much better build quality overall, and the back feels so much better on the 14 Pro Max. But it's also a heavier phone. Some people may like a lighter phone, whatever. Now both phones support wireless charging. Both phones have IP certification, but the 14 Pro Max does have a much bigger size battery, so keep that in mind. You're getting MagSafe capability here, emergency SOS satellite mode, and crash detection on the 14 Pro Max. The iPhone 11 doesn't really have those features, but I still think the iPhone 14 Pro Max holds up very well. Now, another thing the iPhone 14 Pro Max has is 5G. You do not have 5G on the iPhone 11. Is it a big deal? Not really, but it's one of those things you kind of have to throw in there. So in terms of the outside, that kind of covers it up. Now, in terms of the actual software and longevity, you have to remember that the iPhone 11 came out in 2019. It is about 3 years older than the 14 Pro Max. So because of that, you are pretty much getting an older phone on the iPhone 11, which is expected. So this phone is not going to last as long as a 14 Pro Max. That's kind of expected. This device is probably going to last, anywhere from like 3 years, maybe even to 4 years. So this phone is not going anywhere anytime soon. But you have to remember that it's definitely not going to last as long as something like the 14 Pro Max. I mean, this phone just getting started with updates. It's going to be lasting a very long period of time. And personally, I think with the 14 Pro Max, it's going to be here for a long period of time, so you don't really have to worry about it. If you're buying this phone today, it's going to be here tomorrow. Same exact thing with the iPhone 11, but the 14 Pro Max is going to outlast it. So in terms of that covers it up there. Now let's go and do a speed comparison between both these phones. The iPhone 14 Pro Max has that Apple A16 Bionic chip inside of it with 6 gigabytes of RAM, where the iPhone 11 has that Apple A13 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 gigabytes of RAM. So let's go and see which one's the faster one between both. All right, everyone, we are back, and you can see all the apps are clear in the background. 14 Pro Max here, iPhone 11 is here. Let's get into it. Phone calls 3, 2, 1. 14 Pro Max is faster. Music 3, 2, 1. Then the 14 Pro Max again is the faster one here. Hopping out of this one, let's go and get into settings 3, 2, 1. Totally messed that one up. Okay, hopping out of this one, let's do health 3, 2, 1. And again, 14 Pro Max is faster. Let's get into their app stores 3, 2, 1. Now I think I'm logged out of here, so we'll go ahead and kind of leave this one out, but we'll load it up in the background. Mail 3, 2, 1. And I am noticing a pretty big difference in terms of not only the app opening speeds, but also with the promotion. Now, that one was a little bit slower on the 14 Pro Max, not too sure why. But definitely when it comes down to the app opening and just the loading and gestures, you're definitely getting, I think, a smoother experience on the iPhone 14 Pro Max for sure. But the iPhone 11, for it being a 3-year-old phone, is doing very well. And with its IPS panel, I mean, this is a 60 hertz panel, and it still is actually very smooth for the most part. Let's go into Twitter, 3, 2, 1. Now, I will say also, with the more RAM, you're going to be able to load more apps in the background. So especially for big games like Genshin Impact, which I have right here, but I don't know where it is right here. So 3, 2, 1, you are going to be getting a little bit of a better experience, especially when it comes down to this big gaming segment on your iPhone 14 Pro Max. But I still think the iPhone 11 is going to be doing a really decent job as well in this specific segment. So you can see right here, 14 Pro Max, able to load it up faster. The iPhone 11 wasn't really too far behind. Now with some of these other applications, we can try something like Netflix, 3, 2, 1. And again, we have this little network error, but it probably still would have been faster on the 14 Pro Max. Snake versus Blocks, 3, 2, 1. And again, the 14 Pro Max is faster. iPhone 11 a little bit behind. Thank you, 3, 2, 1. And the 14 Pro Max was faster, but the iPhone 11 is not that far behind. It's really interesting. Facebook, 3, 2, 1. I think I'm logged in here. So I'm logged in here. Make sure you guys follow me on Facebook. Let's go into Temple 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. And I am seeing something. I mean, with every single time the apps are opening, it's definitely faster on the 14 Pro Max. But again, the iPhone 11 is 3 years older, and it's still holding up very, very well. So I don't want to just throw the iPhone 11 out the door and be like, oh, it's not that great. It's still doing a pretty decent job, especially for that price tag. It's not really doing that bad. Snapchat, I don't even know where Snapchat is here. We'll just skip that, and we'll just go and do something like Stack 3, 2, 1. So overall, what I'll definitely tell you is, I think the 14 Pro Max is definitely the faster phone here. The iPhone 11 is it's performing better than what I think it was going to be doing. So I think ultimately the iPhone 11 is the slower phone, but it should be because the 14 Pro Max is definitely, it's the newest phone. It's going to be better in that standpoint. Now, in terms of the cameras, this is where it's probably going to be an overall better winner on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. On the 14 Pro Max, we have a triple camera setup, so a wide, ultra-wide, and telephoto lens. The iPhone 11, we only have a wide and ultra-wide camera, which is still pretty good. 4K at 60 on the back and the front, which is really, really nice on both. Now, I do understand it's a little bit kind of blurry a little bit, so hopefully it's okay. But with something like the iPhone 11, in my opinion, I think this is a pretty good camera for its age. If we go and take a look at the actual camera, though, you will see a lot of similarity, in my opinion, with the iPhone 11. You're actually getting a ton of overlap between both. So in my opinion, with something like the iPhone 11, you're getting photo mode, portrait mode, you're getting video mode, slow mode, some other stuff here and there too. But this is a pretty good camera for its age. Now, if you were to compare this to the 14 Pro Max, obviously it wouldn't be fair. The 14 Pro Max is going to be better, but it's not the same phone. It's not even the same lineup, really. So this phone, you have, 5x zoom, 0.5x zoom overall, and I think it does a decent job. It's definitely not perfect, but it gets the job done. And if you have the iPhone 11, I still think it's a pretty decent phone for the most part. With the iPhone 14 Pro Max, though, this is definitely the much better camera in pretty much every single area you look at it. This phone's camera is really, really good, and just like with the iPhone 11, you have 0.5x zoom, but you have 15x zoom, which is really cool. You can zoom in a ton into a photo. You can also zoom out 0.5x as well. You have portrait mode, you have video mode with action mode, you have cinematic mode too. So you're getting more features on the 14 Pro Max, and you're overall getting a way better camera on the 14 Pro Max as well. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, and to be completely honest, I think the iPhone 14 Pro Max is definitely the better phone in pretty much every single area. You're getting better battery life, better build quality, better performance, better longevity. Pretty much everything is going for this phone in its favor, but it is a way more expensive phone than something like the iPhone 11. I mean, this phone is probably $700 more expensive than this one. And you're not getting like a 3 times better phone. You're like, it's definitely better. But the iPhone 11, I think, still does a really good job at holding up against something like the 14 Pro Max. If you still have the iPhone 11, I would probably recommend keeping it. For the years I've been talking about this phone, and with every iOS version, it's been holding up fairly well. But I would probably, if you have the money, go for the 14 Pro Max. If not, I think the iPhone 11 is still a tremendous phone for its value. So in terms of that covers it up here. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.